This episode of Real Talk is dedicated to the life and career of Rob Reiner. Thank you for all the amazing films, Mr. Reiner. You will be missed, but always loved. It's Real Talk, episode 17, written about the screen. Which film will score highest today? New York City comedian and friend of the show Matt Summerstein returns to score Adaptation. Jimmy the Toucan is back after burning down a hotel to grade Barton Fink. And LA-based director Ocean Vashti Jude makes her Real Talk debut to review American Fiction. Now quick, like this episode and subscribe to overcome your writer's block and existential dread.
Real Talk is powered by Real Digital. If you work for a brand or agency producing content, keep it real by setting up a consultation at www.realdigital.media to see how your next campaign can come in ahead of schedule and under budget.
Spike Jonze teams up with screenwriter Charlie Kaufman for a second time to somehow paint an even more profound portrait of the creative experience than they did in their first outing. Adaptation is a living film that never stops being aware of itself and is always evolving in front of us. The relationship between twins Charlie and Donald, both of whom are masterfully played by Nicolas Cage, is a metaphor for the apprehension any creative feels when trying to get outside their comfort zone. It isn't until one of the characters is eliminated from the story that the other can truly appreciate what the relationship is, but the same realization forces that character to grow or maybe adapt. There isn't a bad performance amongst the star-studded cast, and what unifies all the characters seems to be a desire to express themselves through the work of others. Cage's Kaufman is tasked with adapting a book written by Meryl Streep's Susan, but the book itself is a story about Chris Cooper's John LaRoche, a deeply traumatized horticulturalist whose latest business adventure relies on information and assistance from a Native American Seminole tribe, rather traversing ambitions surrounding business, love, loss, and conquering self-doubt. Adaptation is at every moment an example of what it's discussing, and by doing so achieves thematically what few movies can. If we are what we love, and not what loves us back, then this lion is Adaptation. I'm so excited to be joined once again by writer-comedian Matt Summerstein to see how he graded the film. Matt!
Al,
I'm so glad to have you here, buddy.
thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be in your den.
Yeah, thank you. It's equally a pleasure to have you here as well, and it's equally a pleasure to be talking about, spoiler, one of my favorite movies. I really have always loved Adaptation. As is the case on the show, we sort of break down the movie in a few different categories, and I want to start out by asking about the plot, Matt. How did you feel specifically about the plot of Adaptation?
Well, I do also really enjoy this movie. It is a favorite. I've seen it a few times, and each viewing brings something different. The plot, it's very meta. It's very Charlie Kaufman. I believe it opens with they're on the set of Malkovich.
Yeah.
And John Malkovich is saying, keep in mind, these masks are very hot. We don't want to waste any time here. I don't know. I really like that. I hope that has to be real. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
I do wonder, that's one of the kind of magic parts of this movie, is that there's so many little filmmaking tricks, and you find yourself wondering, how did they do that? Obviously, you have Kaufman being played by Nick Cage, and he's playing a set of twins, and there's so many shots. But yeah, right out of the gate,
Great performance.
Right out of the gate, it had me thinking, was this footage that they just had from BTS footage from the movie, or did they recreate?
Yeah,
was this
going back to shoot it with the big budget? Yeah, very Hollywood, the movie, the plot, very meta, it's in Hollywood and it's about Hollywood, and it's, obviously Charlie Kaufman is a character in his own movie. He says that later.
Yeah.
I've written myself into my own movie. There is no Donald Kaufman, though, right?
Yeah, correct. I mean,
a creation, a figment.
Yeah, a total just sort of what I have to believe. Donald is just sort of a representation of what Charlie is, kind of missing in himself. There's this great moment that I had forgotten, having seen it previous, but that really stood out to me this time, where there's this moment where Charlie is listening on a tape recorder. He's listening back to some notes he had taken earlier. He's very excited when he took the notes.
Right.
But while he's listening to his own excitement, he looks so disappointed, and he looks so almost upset with himself that he was so excited about something earlier that he now doesn't believe in so much. And that moment where you see him listening to himself is a really perfect sort of example of his relationship with his brother, who, yeah, is totally fictitious.
Well, those, I mean, as creatives, we know those creative spurts of, oh, this is genius, and then looking back on it, and it's not so good. I think, you know, Charlie is very extreme in that.
Yeah.
Like hate it almost immediately, but
And obviously, I mean, the movie is called Adaptation. It's the plot. It's very much about, you know, a screenwriter trying to adapt a book. I mean, Matt, you're a writer. You're a performer. I'm just curious, like, how much when you're watching a movie like this does that connect with you, sort of immediately in your process and in the situations you find yourself in?
You know, I don't really not to know and it, but I definitely see a lot of myself in the movie, but I guess I don't relate it so much to being like a performer or either a writer. Maybe it's because of my current state, but like more just like kind of the wallowing of his life, like the sadness of his life, and not and unconfident and second guessing and things like that kind of is where I was watching it from.
Sure.
Around. And full disclosure, I've seen this movie many times, but I read the script because I did not have access to the movie. So obviously a different lens there. I can't wait to talk about visual style.
Yes, that'll be, we'll breeze through that.
Yeah, I remember there are a handful of shots and visual things that I do really enjoy from the movie.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Because again, I think that what I think this plot does so well, and it is clearly kind of setting out to do, is this idea of, we have, like I said, this situation where the characters are obviously adapting other work, they're adapting situations, but I feel like what really stood out to me was this struggle with the character, and I don't want to make it too much about the characters, because I am specifically just talking about the way things play out, but it seems clear to me that they are almost trying to adapt themselves into what they want to be.
Absolutely, yes.
And it seems like that is sort of by the end of the story where we end with Charlie, where he says as much. He says he's for the first time felt hope, you know, and I'm just curious, when you talk about like the creator in you and you're talking about that sort of connecting to the end, I don't know, when you get to the end of the movie, is there a sense of something in there that you take away? Is there anything that you feel that makes you go like, oh yeah, I am more hopeful, like having spent time with this character who's sort of wallowing and have found this? Or I don't know, did it leave you wanting maybe a little bit more in terms of a conclusion? Because let's face it, it's sorry not to ask you a question, jump in, but this movie is kind of, again, always constantly evolving. And so by the time you get to the third act, it is a very different movie than the one that you started in the first act. And so I don't know. I'm just curious.
Well, to me, it is, as you said, like, you don't want to talk too much about characters, but like, aside from like almost the movie within the movie elements and like, here's what a movie should be, and that's been used and that hasn't been done, as he and Donald discuss their scripts, and Donald, just happy idiot, is like, I love Fast and the Furious. What's wrong with making Fast and the Furious? And Charlie, of course, holds himself to this standard, and everyone's telling him at all time that he's brilliant, but he doesn't. I guess I relate to that. People being like, oh, you're so good, and just be like, no, you're just being
right.
Not seeing yourself in that way. So like, to me, to talk about the plot, as much as it is totally everyone's adapting, Susan becomes fucking crazy drug addict, and as she longs to like feel something, basically, like that's what draws her to LaRoche. And then the fucking high Seminole who's like, your hair, your eyes. I don't know why that was his accent. That's not it. But he's like, I see a deep sadness. And then it's like, what does this drug do? But also, it's funny that she didn't realize they were fucked up.
Oh, that's the funniest part. Right? Yeah, that he really liked her.
But the movie is the characters. I mean, that's what it is. And they're changing. And, you know, when things get crazy in the third act, like Brian Cox just fucking, he's such a pain in the ass, but he's such a good actor. He says, like, you have two acts, you don't have a third act, but you don't need two acts. Basically, if you have a third act, you have a hit, kind of like that. It's funny reading it, especially because you already see it, but he's just pitch perfect for it.
Oh yeah.
The plot is the characters. I mean, it's the life of Charlie and Donald's not even real. And
well, so then I guess on that note, I mean, if you've got to give a 1 out of 10.
Oh yeah.
So I guess the question is, I mean, do you feel?
I mean, it's a fantastic movie. It's one of my favorite movies.
And do you feel like it lands the bird? Yeah. Does it?
Definitely. It's right up. And I love Malkovich as well. Like, that's another one of my. I'm trying to remember. Oh yeah. I mean, it's right up there with, in my opinion, best movies of the 2000s. So plot wise, I'd give it a 9.
Yeah.
I don't know how easy it is to get a 10. But it's pretty damn. I mean, it's great. The also the time. It's got like Christopher Nolan-esque like time jumps and things like that. But the mind fuckery is like what makes it. You know, you watch it, you're like, whoa, what? Huh?
It forces you to pay attention.
Yeah.
You can't.
And there's always something else you pick up from it. And
Absolutely.
in just reading it, I would say the plot is a little like, you know, as the book, he's like, as his struggle is, nothing's happening. It's like, nothing's really happening.
And I think that when Charlie
Portrait of a sad guy. It's a great portrait of like a sad, like, just jerking off all the time and envisioning and trying, like a woman gives him any sort of kindness. He's like,
oh, that's all I need.
Yeah. All I need. And
to weave an entire
yeah.
And also the way that then plays out in real life is so funny.
Yeah.
She's just just kind of awkwardly
she whispers, you see her whisper, and he's like, but he eats the pie.
It is really magnificent.
Yeah.
All right, well then, I mean, obviously we're already talking about the characters. We're transitioning there, and I think that, you know, when you're talking about Charlie sort of being this like archetype of like a sad, kind of lowly creative, self-loathing creative, that's what's so great about the dynamic with Brian Cox, because Brian Cox is this weird, like almost hyper positive message, just the package in the most brutal, like least warm way possible. But it's what Charlie needs to hear, and I think that is what's really fun about the movie is that there is, I mean, every character has an arc. I mean, even down to the waitress Greer, was it
Judy Greer?
Judy Greer,
Another one of my favorite actors.
Great, and a great director, great writer director.
Oh, yeah.
But she has an arc. I mean, we see even in that little, like, going from the fantasy girl to being the, like, you know, waitress that was just being nice and has now realized maybe, I was maybe a little too nice. But everybody has an arc. Everybody, again, for lack of a better term, adapts and grows to the movie. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, you said it earlier, the movie is its characters. What do you give it out of 10? Like, if you were
character-wise or acting or
so characters and performers, it's kind of a blend into one. This is sort of a marriage of not just the characters, but obviously how well they were performed.
Well, the elements of the film, and they all have to work together.
Yeah,
that to me is a big problem with, you know, the modern blockbusters we were talking about before, where it's like, every movie I see now in theaters is like, there was some stuff that I liked, but like it almost feels like we threw out like the elements of style,
especially when you're talking about like really recognizable casts. Like a lot of times in modern films I see it's like, oh, we have an A-list cast, so they don't need to act. They don't need to do anything. They just need to sort of show up, hit their mark, and we like them. I was really disappointed with the recent Fantastic Four release because, again, I felt like you have all this great talent and nobody's really doing anything. Pedro Pascal is just sort of doing this Matthew Broderick impression.
Great in that.
Well, that's what I'm thinking the whole time. He's
I like him though. I like him. They don't do anything.
But that is my point. Is like that's where we're at. Where it's like I like Pedro Pascal, so I'm going to pay to see Pedro Pascal be Mr. Fantastic, not play Mr. Fantastic.
Right.
Whereas in this movie, again, everybody is constantly acting. Everybody is doing something. I mean, even when you get
performances, Meryl Streep is so like, you know, not especially when she's like crazy and we're gonna kill him. And
what I love so much with her performance is there are these moments, and this is what I think the movie does really cleverly, because anybody who's ever even sniffed a film school has heard, you know, show don't tell.
Yeah.
And this movie does a lot of telling, you know, and it's very aware of that. And to the point where there are scenes where Meryl Streep is just listening to a dial tone, you know, and it works. It's really funny. And so it just goes to show that on the page, you can write something as simple as she's just listening to a dial tone and enjoying it because she's high. But it takes a performer like Meryl Streep to make that, to really do something with that. And it feels appropriate for the character. And it is a situation we haven't seen her before. And it's just, that's what I think this movie has. It's just rich. It's just so saturated with inspiration and ideas. And when you compare it to sort of more contemporary films, that's what I see. I just see all these big names and they just seem like they couldn't be bothered to be there.
Right.
You know?
It's very like old school star system of just like, that's why the people are here.
Right.
They love Pedro Pascal on SNL last night. Now let's have him.
And it works. I had a friend who, you know, I criticized the performance and he came back and immediately he said, I loved it. I love Pedro Pascal. And so clearly that's all he had to do. He just had to show up and see him and he would have been happy with him.
I do like this movie though. Like I do.
Fair enough.
Fantastic Four. But before we continue to talk,
before we have a review of Fantastic Four, we'll get back to adaptation.
Right.
We're
characters.
We're adapting this review in real time to a Fantastic Four review. You didn't think Leave a like if you
liked that adaptation. We'll talk more about Fantastic Four.
We'll do anything. I mean,
Please give us like.
yeah, we're in the fucking jungle over here, guys. All right, we'll switch a review halfway through. Well, let me ask you this: characters and performances. If you're gonna give it a 1 out of 10, what?
Oh, it's a 10. I love Nick Cage. I think this is one of Nick Cage's best movies.
Is it his best performance? I'm gonna put you on the spot. That's a yes or no.
Probably.
It's hard for me to think.
Leaving Las Vegas is like. Have you seen Leaving Las Vegas?
I have. I was gonna say there are other roles that I think are more.
Well, I was about to say this is a great role,
right?
To a neurotic and his foil, basically.
Yeah,
but he's perfect. I mean, I love Nick Cage. He's not in everything, but or not all of his choices.
Oh, of course. Well,
But when he's good, he's. Oh man. So yeah, he's great. And then it's littered with actors of the 2000s that I love to see, and like a lot of like who even getting close on the name Judy Greer is pretty good. Just like who is that? Who like what?
Yeah.
So like Cara Seymour, who plays the girl that he loves, she's like an actress that I always like to see, and I think Chris Cooper got the Oscar nomination for this. I don't think he won, but I think he got it.
Yeah,
and he is fucking perfect. Yeah. And that character is great too. I love his. I'm not into that anymore. Or like, oh yeah, I'm doing porn now.
Oh, that's such a great.
They'll, they don't mind if they're fat, ugly.
These guys will buy anything.
Yeah, these guys will buy anything. Very true, Chris.
Yeah. No, he's so great. And one of the reasons that I really appreciate his performances because it's such a great juxtaposition to the Meryl Streep performance, and they're this sort of yin yang of one is all passion and the other is all intellect, and the way they kind of weave in together is really great. How great is Ron Livingston and his very small role? Oh, it's just,
but he's good. He's good.
But just an example of, again, there sort of are no small roles that in a good movie, because it's just, I mean, I probably laugh harder with a few of his lines than I do at any other point in the movie.
Yeah,
and
he's
just,
great.
And also just, again, a great, not a foil, but his relationship with Charlie is all you need to know about why Charlie feels the way he does. The person managing a career seemingly has no sort of appreciation.
Yeah, no, he's doing something. He's trying to make art, and that's why he loves Donald's script and making a killing. At least in the script, there's like this kind of change. That's when he starts to respect Donald at that.
Oh yeah.
Point. But like, I'm trying to remember, is there something visually where you're kind of like, does he have like an aha? Like, was the Buddhist like, I can't. To me, that moment would probably be the turn of him towards Donald would probably be that like, it doesn't matter if you get to love who you want. It doesn't matter if they love you back.
Oh yeah.
That to me is probably the like, aha, I love my brother.
Yeah.
But he is genuinely like, Donald, wow, you're actually doing this thing that has escaped me. And
yeah, he respects it.
Yeah.
And what he's done is he's learned respect for that part of the process.
Mm-hmm.
Something that he's resented, and something that I think he's very purposefully chosen to distance himself from. And by embracing his brother, he sort of learned. I mean, we're talking about the visuals of the movie. I think that for me, what sort of succeeds so much is there's a lot of different approaches. I mean, you get time-lapse footage of the beginning of man, where you're seeing the evolution.
The baby coming out of the.
Yes, of course, is a nice
just a
close-up there
for a moment. I remember as a kid watching that, like, whoa!
Oh, that's how I got here. Yeah, no, thank you.
Before, man, everything. It was nothing. And trees and sorry, I don't remember.
No, but that shade of like newborn purple, there's just something really unsettling about it.
It's very visceral.
Yeah,
primordial even.
That's right.
Al, it's primordial.
The end of the movie closes with a really great time lapse that I love, where we're just sort of sitting, resting, kind of
grows.
Yeah, we're just sort of resting in this like median strip in the somewhere in Hollywood, and there's just these sort of flowers that are kind of growing and living. So I thought that it's very straightforward when it needs to be, you know, but there are these really great inspired moments, even down to like when we're on set at the beginning with John Malkovich and the sort of kind of grainy, you know, footage that we're seeing. But yeah, this is a tough movie because again, it is so much about the ideas, it's so much about the performances, and it's certainly not doing anything wrong when we're talking about visuals, but it's probably not a movie you're going to walk away from describing shots.
Yeah,
no,
like no.
So
no.
So on that level, then what do you? But also, I have to remind you when we're talking about the visual storytelling, we're also talking about this editor, and I think he couldn't really do much better. Yeah.
A lot of the comedy is in the edit. And
absolutely,
I love the wide of the people in the lecture hall, and then him like standing up, and then
even the way that's lit, it's so great because it's like he doesn't have a spotlight on him. It wouldn't. It's not how that works. But it's again, it's a very like. It isn't lit naturally in the sense that that's not what an audience would look like. But this movie just has these moments where you sort of live in that shot. And it is about him being in the spotlight. Yeah. So there's this very sort of soft kind of gradient that falls off into the audience around him. And so again, I don't want it to seem like I'm taking anything away from the picture because it's not falling over itself to make like a memorable shot. I guess my question is, what do I rate it? What would you rate it?
It's not that kind of movie, but
yeah,
8.
Yeah,
it has time lapses. That shot at the end with the flower growing is nice. It has 2 actors on screen at the same time, played by the same person. Someone did a good composite there.
Oh,
whatever the term is.
I mean, that is seamless.
Can we just say, that cutting edge, to be honest.
Yeah, because there's
2001, 2002.
Yeah, and there's no moment that stood out to me where it felt, oh, that's a double, or that's what. Even you go back and you watch like the Fellowship of the Rings these days, and you can start to see,
or that's the edge.
Yeah,
could tell the stunt doubles here and there.
There were some notable.
But yeah, no, I mean, I also just like, if we're throwing visual in there, I thought like his like constant dripping in sweat was really
yes.
Yeah, the look is great. The purple sweaters that they both have, the his like balding head.
Oh,
he's killing it there. I wish Donald. No. Yeah. In the script, it's referred to. He looks at Marty, Ron Livingston's beautiful, not receding hairline, because all day he's like, "I'm fat, I'm bald.
Oh yeah,
I'm fat, I'm bald." And I was like, "Oh, I kind of relate to that." So like that was kind of. I was looking at it through that lens, but no, yeah. I mean, it's not a visual movie, but it's still very well made. And Spike Jonze.
Oh yeah,
did a great job. I mean,
absolutely.
I'd give it like an 8.
Yeah, I think that's really fair.
That's fair.
I think
that'll do.
Let us know in the comments if you think that's not fair.
Yeah, remind us of some great shots that stood out.
Yeah,
to you.
how about that? How about you do that?
Yeah, how about you do something, audience?
We appreciate the listening, but it's really time for you
better start carrying your weight around here.
When we talk about the use of sound, again, it's difficult in a movie like this because it isn't. I don't know. It's not something that you're going to walk away remembering the score. There is a really. There's a specific track in the movie that is used to great effect.
Happy Together?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the Happy Together track. I think that's utilized really well. I think the way the tension is built, I think that even in those weird sort of, sequences where we're getting the time-lapse footage and we're getting different things, there's just these fun tracks and music and just little things.
Yeah, science.
So I genuinely think the soundtrack elevates the movie. I think that with a different soundtrack, with a less inspired soundtrack, this isn't as good of a film.
I take your word for it, Al.
Take my word for it and give it a score. That use of sound.
I'm going to go 7.
I love it. All right. I love it. That was a great confident 7.
Confident 7.
Now, the last category we're going to talk about is theme. I think this is the most relevant category of the movie. I mean, this movie is a living, breathing theme. Yeah. I mean, the characters are symbols of themes. The characters are symbols of characters expressing themes and traversing themes.
A lot of longing. And, particularly, I mean, both of them. Charlie longs for, I guess, just to be loved, basically. Or to just be, I feel like there's a lot of, he's so full of regret. And it's annoying, too, because it's like, at this point, Charlie Kaufman, remember, like, he calls Donald on the phone and she's like, Catherine Keener is here. Mm-hmm. And he's like, why is she would never hang out with me. It's like, this is all self-doubt. You've written some of the great movies. I don't know if that's like so true to him. Like, is that the real Charlie Kaufman in there? Anyway.
No, but I think that's a really fair point, because all the characters in this movie are successful people.
Yeah.
You know, you're dealing with a New York Times writer who has a book that's being optioned for a movie. Charlie Kaufman plays himself, who's a successful screenwriter. Even LaRoche has always been successful with his things until he's just decided to do something different.
Right.
So I think it's a really good point that you've made, because we're dealing with successful people who, for one reason or another, none of them are happy.
Yeah.
And they're all looking for something.
Right. So a lot of longing, and she, you know, I think LaRoche probably has it the most, like, even though his passions shift, because it seems like something gets in the way and he's like, oh, no more of this. But, you know, he's just unflappable to like,
right.
I found the next thing. And, you know, she says a lot of like, looking for something, almost what she misses is what she longs for is longing, basically, or
right.
to care deeply about something.
She wants a passion.
Yeah. And she's like, you know, in that little bit about her personal life with her husband and her friends, and they're all kind of, you know, very hoity-toity, basically, and look down on maybe someone that has a passion, and she, you know,
well, and even, I mean, I think that's perfectly represented where they mock his teeth. They keep saying that one of her friends goes, well, why wouldn't he have them fixed? And you come to find out later that his missing his front teeth is him sort of wearing the scar because he feels responsible.
The real things he's lost.
Right. In this idea that one person looks down on someone for an aesthetic choice, whereas that aesthetic choice that person has made is so much more important than any label and someone could wear or anything. And so again, it shows the superficiality of the intellectual sort of looking down on somebody who's made a decision that is extremely deep and really personal to them. I feel like it's important to mention that the character of Meryl Streep points out to LaRoche at one point when they're talking about evolution. I think it's really interesting that she sort of frames evolution as almost being a cop-out. Like there's this sort of moment where, and it's very much when we were talking about LaRoche sort of just giving up on something and moving on cold, she sort of offers that there's almost maybe this like cowardice to it, and that it sort of requires a little bit of courage to like stick around and deal with something as opposed to changing for it. And I don't know, I thought that was certainly not something I philosophically agree with, but I thought it was just an interesting point for her to offer, especially as the story plays out.
Because of the way the movie is set up and the like meta-ness of it, I almost feel like she, you know, it's almost like the characters had their whatever for the first two parts, and then everything's kind of thrown on its head. Like everyone has adapted by accident, basically.
Right.
And I guess maybe not LaRoche, but like Meryl Streep completely is now just like, and to me, a lot of that is more about, you know, the theme of like Hollywood and filmmaking.
Oh, absolutely.
And things like that. And
I think the highest achievement a film can make is to become an example of what it's discussing. I don't think it's easy to do. I don't think every film can do that because of just certain stories. But I do think this film does that. I think this is a movie that is about adapting work. It is about adapting as a person. And it is a movie that adapts at all times. It is constantly changing. What's amazing is it actually doesn't just pull work from other mediums and it pulls work from its own medium. And it talks about it as, you know, to call it meta and self-referential is appropriate. But again, I do think the movie is a perfect execution of its theme. Yeah. So having said that, that's a real hard setup for you to come back and go, I give it a 4. But
no, I do think it's a really excellent movie. And you know, it's anytime you can watch a movie many times and get more out of it, and it's working on all these levels, and a lot like you were saying about.
I thought you were gonna say a lot like me.
I'd give it like a 93, a 94.
Yeah,
it's like a 10. I mean, that's what the movie.
That's the correct answer, by the way.
You know, there's a lot of there are like other things that I kind of want to like touch on. Brian Cox gives that whole great monologue in this movie where he's like, "You say nothing happens in real life? Yeah. A man loses a lever at the house of a friend." You know, all these things. I wouldn't want to live in that world. Sorry, I had to do my Brian Cox.
No, I love it. I'm kind of wishing the whole review were done in this Brian Cox impression. This is breaking it out too late.
He asks this question. He's like, what about a movie where nothing happens? What do I do? And then Brian Cox gives this like a page-long monologue about it. And he just stands there completely overwhelmed by the answer. He's like, yeah. And then sends it back to, or like, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, this is very defeated. Like,
defeats him. I love that they get together after and he gets to say to him, like, I'm in your class, but I'm actually a screenwriter. And like, what do I do? What would you do? And I really don't like Brian Cox anymore, but he is a fantastic actor.
Oh no, he is
has these like great, grandiose.
Oh, just this very,
or somewhere between like Hamlet. I mean King Lear and and
there's a regalness. There's this sort of just energy that he brings, and it's great because that's I think the only character in the movie you hear about before you meet them. You hear it because Donald is going to the classes, and then you finally meet him. So there is this great setup, like, well, who is this guy going to be? Because we who kind of believe Charlie, you think this guy's going to be a bag of air, but he ends up, being quite the opposite.
Yeah. He's great. I'm glad that he adapts and listens to his ideas and adapts. And he does. I guess Charlie's adaptation is that he mans up and tells Alice or Megan or Margaret, the woman that he pines for, that he always has pined for her. And do they get together? Does she say you should have told me sooner? Yeah, in the scripts I read, they get together. She comes over and it's like, let's go to the orchid show.
So if I recall,
she says she's like with someone.
She's with someone, and it ends with him again, just sort of driving away, and to the Brian Cox sort of monologue earlier that he does, it calls back where it does just end with Charlie in the car and some voiceover, and he drives off, and he explains that this isn't what I should be doing, but kind of this is what I am going to do, and he talks about how he has found hope.
Yeah.
And I think that is what I would submit if we're talking about adaptation through an evolutionary standpoint. That is what his character sort of evolved to be comfortable having hope. I think he always had hope. I just don't think he was comfortable acknowledging that. And I think that his brother Donald represented that. I think his brother Donald is this like shining star of hope. Yeah. And when that's gone, I think Charlie has to recognize, oh wait, this is on me now. And so that's how I took it. And then obviously right as that is made, we didn't kind of pan over and we see the flowers growing and me and you. So I felt like it was kind of driven home. I will tell you now your score. You gave just a review. You gave the plot a 9. You gave the characters and performances a 10. You gave the visual storytelling an 8. The use of sound a 7, and the theme a 10. That means your grade is an 88, which means it is a B+. So you have the opportunity now. You can adjust that. Yeah, I will not lock in the B. If you give it in,
lock in the B, Professor. Is there a makeup test?
This is the Regis Filmon section of the show where I force
your final answer.
Yeah. So as an A, you could go A+. You can go A. Technically, you graded it an 88, which is a B. I guess a B+.
C+.
But it sounds like
I'd call it an A- to A movie.
Okay. I'm going to lock in an A.
Okay.
I'm going to lock in an A.
I would probably say it's like one of the best movies of since 2000.
Right. I agree. And it's hard because it's hard for me to say, okay, this is what it's missing. There are other great movies that I really enjoy, but I go, well, if it just had this thing or if it just did this, mine was, I gave the plot a 9.5 to your 9
decimals.
You can do a half one. I'm sorry, I should have explained that.
No, that's okay. Just a half, not a 9.3.
I'm sticking to the half. If you want to get crazy, I'm gonna let you. Let's keep it to just round quarters, okay?
Just for the number for the statistician to. He's new.
Exactly. We've got Frankie, who's our cat, who's actually
the cat.
Yeah, who does
rounding up the numbers.
All of our analytics.
Or she.
Yeah, that's her greenhouse.
Are there 2 cats?
There are. There's Margie and Frankie.
Margie
handles all our social media, and Frankie does our analytics.
Love you guys. Look this up for me, Frankie. Turn your camera on, Frankie.
That's right, Frankie. Pop on. Frankie is our Brian Redman. So I gave the plot a 9.5. The only reason it's not a 10 for me is, the ending of the movie is sort of a different movie than where we started. And I get that that's the point. I get that that's the, but I do think in some ways, unfortunately, it does almost, it doesn't quite become, I think, what
it doesn't elevate anything there other than like, now it's an action movie. Now it's like a blockbuster.
From where Charlie starts to where Charlie ends, like he's had a lot has happened to him, but yeah, by the end it basically, I don't want to say devolves, we'll say evolves into a movie that it was kind of previously sort of mocking a little bit.
Yeah.
And so if it is its way of saying, hey, those movies are okay, then that's fine. But at the same time, I really enjoyed the movie I was seeing, and I kind of wonder what that movie's anyway would be. So very minor criticism. Again, 9.5 out of 10.
I mean, I think about that too. Like I really feel like Meryl Streep's character kind of gets thrown away as she becomes,
I agree.
like a junkie. And I know that, not a junkie, but just like a mad woman. But like, and I know that
hedonist. She becomes a hedonist. Someone who is like, was lacking passion, and then is chasing sex and adventure and these other things. Characters and performances, I also gave a 10. There's no criticisms there. I think everybody kills it. The visual storytelling, I gave an 8.5. So again, just using my decimals here just to kind of make you out a little bit. The use of sound, I gave a 9. Again, I didn't think that there was, I don't think if you were ever having an isolated conversation about sound in film, anybody would ever bring up Adaptation as an example, but
it does its job.
But yeah, within the movie, I don't think that it certainly doesn't do anything wrong. It's technically proficient, and I think it works. The theme, I gave a 10 out of 10. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. So my score was a 94. That means we both gave it an A, which makes the average pretty easy. But Matt, I really appreciate you coming by and hanging out.
Thanks for having me.
At Den.
Yeah.
We do have a merch shop. I would love
merch shop.
Check out the merch shop. If you haven't done so yet, Matt, you could leave a like by now if you wanted.
On the merch?
On the video, this video that we're in, you could leave a like on that.
I'll like it.
Yeah. I want you to like.
I'm going to when it goes live.
I want you to like it right now. That's the thing I want you to do. I'm going to like it right now.
How are you going to like it right now?
It's already done.
What?
I just liked it.
This is so meta.
Yeah.
Much like the movie.
Yeah. This is me trying to have a Charlie Kaufman ending to this.
You've written your likes into your own podcast.
Yeah.
That's kind of weird.
This is me injecting my own version of hope.
Mom said it was psychologically taught. Such a good line.
And then he's
perfect as that. I mean, to play both those roles.
But his rebuttal to he goes, yeah, Mom does know a lot about structure.
Yeah, she's right. Yeah, I think he says something sarcastic.
Yes, she does. I know so too.
It's like, I was kidding, Donald. Oh, that was a joke, Donald.
Well, Matt, will you come back again? Will you come back and watch?
I would love to watch and review another movie.
Amazing. Well, thank you, my friend, and until next time.
Platinum Plastic isn't just a proud sponsor of Real Talk, they're also the home for all our new designs and merchandise. Follow Platinum Plastic on Redbubble to see all our A-plus gear. That's Platinum Plastic on Redbubble for all your Real Talk merch.
I'm a lion, do pretend to be a critic, and have a gut, but my gut tells me that Barton Fink is a little too cryptic. I love a cinematic poem, and spoiler, I love Barton Fink, but after multiple viewings, the film seems more like a puzzle that's not meant to be solved, which is perhaps a metaphor itself for the discovery of one's creative process. Fink is the title character, and the entire story revolves around his move to Los Angeles from New York, his transition from Broadway to Hollywood, and the descent Barton makes from critical admiration to the 6th floor of hell. You'll likely recognize every member of the cast as this collection of incredible talent would go on to dominate film and television in the following decades. But it is the confidence each actor brings to their role that truly elevates this cinematic play to something entirely different. Barton Fink, the film, feels like something between a movie and a live performance, almost like a living idea trying to escape the medium containing it. But is that good? Like waves crashing on a shore, the creative experience is a wild and unpredictable natural act that can over time create a rhythm of chaos so peaceful you can get lost staring into it, looking for an answer that was never there. So did Barton Fink sell his soul, or is he wallowing in a hell a creative must cultivate to draw inspiration from? Let's discuss wrestling scenarios and other things literary with the returning Jimmy the Toucan. Jimmy, welcome to the Five Timers Club, and please take advantage of the free shoe shining service.
Oh, great to be back, Al. I have talons, so I won't need these shoes to be shined.
Yeah, I mean, I when I said it, I felt bad. I've never actually seen you wear a pair of shoes. Hard to perch on a branch when you're wearing a pair of Doc Martens, you know. If I ever had to go back to LA and I had to room next to someone, so to speak, if I had to neighbor next to someone, I definitely would like it to be Jimmy the Toucan. Jimmy, let me ask you, we're talking films, kind of about films and filmmaking today on today's episode. You drew Barton Fink. When's the first time you saw this picture? What was the impact it had on you?
Well, I love movies about making movies, even in the tangential way that this one is. The first time I saw this was on a Netflix DVD, probably early 2000s. I kind of shied away from this one because the cover of it, the poster of it at Blockbuster and everywhere else, it was scary. You know, this like eraser head looking at glasses guy with a mosquito on his face. And I looked at it not really excited about seeing that one. And incidentally, this Coen Brothers film, which was directed and written and also edited by the brothers, this is our second shot at doing one of their films. We did No Country for Old Men.
That's right. And as you recall, Jimmy, if you go to our merch shop, Platinum Plastic is the sponsor. They do our merch shop. And we have a No Country for Old Lions design, which may or may not be my favorite design because it's the only design that currently features both Jimmy and Al. Yeah, that's right. I turned your plug of our old episode into a plug about our merch shop. Look at us. The synergy is bubbling here.
I really like that shirt. I really like that shirt.
I enjoy it as well. So you saw it when it came out. You
saw it on DVD.
Avoided it a little bit because it did.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I remember sort of seeing posters and stuff and just sort of wondering what it was. I'm a little bit younger than you, so I kind of for a while didn't know the difference between Barton Fink and Eraserhead. I don't think I actually got to film school. I sort of understood that, oh, those aren't the same movie. But anyway, continue. So you see it on DVD, early 2000s.
Yeah, you get to a point liking good movies by, especially these guys, like Fargo was a really big one for me. And so going back and looking at their work previous to Fargo was really cool. I'm really interested in the body of work that these men have created. And I think there's something really funny. Like, I love this idea of, there's a little story about the brothers kind of struggling creating the movie Miller's Crossing. It's contentious about what kind of writer's block that they have, but it makes sense in the conflict and the struggle of creating Miller's Crossing. They took 2 weeks off and just wrote Barton Fink. And they immediately launched into making this movie. And so I think there's something really fun about the idea of when you can't move forward on one story, you just put it down and jump onto another one. You know, they won the Palme d'Or that year in France, nominated for 3 Academy Awards, as a kind of side project almost. It turned into a pretty big hit.
It's a fair endorsement of procrastination, is what you're saying.
I always say, if nobody wants you at the party, just start your own party.
Let us know in the comments how appropriate that analogy may or may not be for a party you're hosting, for the next screening of Barton Fink, anything that you're doing. Yeah. Before we get into the plot of this movie, the first time you saw Barton Fink, what was your takeaway from it?
Oh, God.
My first time seeing it, I remember immediately recognizing I don't get this.
I think the first run through for me was I was looking at movies purely as the art form and looking at the costumes and the casting and the production design, and my real memories of that movie really before I had seen it again recently was the goopy peeling wallpaper. Now that I know this about this sort of side project that they're writing, it kind of feels to me at odds against the Hollywood system they make something about, the strife and the conflict that the writer undergoes in doing the work.
And Barton Fink ends up becoming this really interesting sort of sibling film to Hail Caesar, which is a film the Coen brothers did much later, because it's also takes place in a classic Hollywood, and we follow a producer who's more of a detective, it's played by Josh Brolin, who may or may not have also popped up in a Coen brothers movie you and I talked about. I just point that out because, the Coen brothers clearly, much like a Quentin Tarantino, sort of have a love affair with, certain time in Hollywood, and I think this movie is a really great backdrop for the metaphor I think they're trying to talk about in the creative process. But it sounds like, Jimmy, your takeaway from understanding when and how the story was written, that maybe this backdrop is less metaphorical and more actual literal in terms of what maybe they were experiencing themselves as filmmakers working their way up through the system. In terms of the plot, for those not familiar, because let's face it, Barton Fink, which was a movie that was only made for $9 million, did not make its money back. It didn't even hit $7 million at the box office. This film came out in 1991, so even then, that's a tough break. It's a heady movie. It's not a movie that, again, I would expect everybody who have seen. Basically, the story is Barton Fink is a playwright who has just written a very successful play. He's given the opportunity to go to Hollywood, although he does not really want to. He's coerced into by his representation. He goes out there, he starts working on a wrestling picture for the studio. He is rooming next to an alcoholic door-to-door insurance salesman who turns out to be a serial killer. And wouldn't you know, at some point, Barton does find the inspiration he's looking for, writes an incredible script, or so he thinks, but unfortunately the studio does not agree, and he is just sort of imprisoned to stay in LA, but out of the sight of the studio head, and just sort of rewrite this movie.
Well, it's quite an enigma, because we have that basic cutout that you just gave us, and we spend a lot of time with this character, dealing with seedy characters all around him, and I think that it's about this character's reaction to the world. Sometimes I'm kind of confused about a couple things. There is a part where Barton Fink, the character, wakes up in his bed in his which was mostly perceived as this sort of solitary confinement, with interruptions and injections of his wonderful neighbor, played by a stellar, very young John Goodman.
The fresh baby-faced John Goodman.
No, they're all so young. It's great. I still don't understand what happened. I don't understand what happened. There is this impetus for what we think is going to be a lovemaking scene, and the camera crawls away and then goes down the drain, and then he wakes up next to a dead body, and a very bloody dead body. We just assume that John Goodman is responsible for that. It's not really explained. So he's just laying there sleeping, and John Goodman's just killing this woman.
Look, here's how I looked at it, because there's a motif that's used that I'll talk about now, even though maybe it's a little more, appropriate for visual storytelling, where, like you said, we go down the drain. That is also seen when we go into this sort of trumpet later in the film, when Barton has written his script. He's really happy. He goes to this USO sort of dance hall party. He's experiencing a ton of pleasure. Then he gets punched in the face. Do you see the connection I'm making there? Pleasure, pain. And then we go down right into the trumpet hole. So the same sort of thing happens with her. So many times we see the John Goodman character come in and out of the room without knocking. It's totally plausible. It's also later said that he is a serial killer who decapitates his victims. So it's very much sort of understood when he picks her up later that he's probably potentially does what his reputation is, and may even leave Barton David Fincher 7-esque inspired kid. So yeah, I mean, that's really the only evidence the movie gives you. But of course, you also then at that point have to be taking that part of the story literal. And I think there's a really good chance that what Barton is experiencing and seeing is more of a sort of a metaphor, or not a metaphor, but more of a translation of the story he's writing, and how that's in his head and what he's experiencing. Because he obviously doesn't go to prison. He doesn't go to jail. I mean, for a guy whose mattress is covered in the blood of a victim, I mean, he's not even arrested at any point, you know? So I sort of just interpret it as that action and that adventure was the movie's way of injecting excitement into a story about the mundane. And I assume that's what his script was in the wrestling picture.
Right on.
I'll take that endorsement from Jimmy as time. The plot score. Jimmy, what'd you give it? 1 out of 10.
Al, I gave it a 7.
Jimmy gave the plot of Barton Fink a 7, and that is locked in. That brings us on to characters and performances. You mentioned John Goodman. You mentioned John Turturro. Let's shout out Tony Shalhoub.
Young Tony Shalhoub.
Just
Young.
what just a bitchin' performance, man. He is just holding it down. Again, I am a mascot for a production company. I love a producer that's just out it. I love this guy, Tony Shalhoub. Ben is his character's name. How about John Mahoney?
He was great.
As W.P. Mayhew, who is this Southern literary, well, he's a novelist, and now he's writing screenplays. He has a love interest who is sort of his ghostwriter, played by Judy Davis, and he is this abusive drunk. But for fans of Frasier, if you haven't seen Barton Fink, please, you're gonna be pleased.
How about a young Steve Buscemi? He was so good. I loved the two guys that were the cops. I mean, they were so good. The casting of this film is so great. Sometimes it's a little questionable to me because the characters are written in such a flexible way, but I think the casting really nails it. I love John Goodman. There's this great, when they first meet, he goes, it's really funny. He keeps saying, I could tell you some stories. I could tell you some stories. I love that so much.
Yeah. He has such a boyish, charming, it's just so bittersweet. And when, again, I'm just going to ask you right now, is he the devil?
Given the climactic moment where he is strolling through a fiery hallway, he might be the devil.
Yeah. I mean, they are on the 6th floor, for what it's worth, although not in room 66, but it might be. Also, I just want to mention, Barton Fink is a movie about writing a wrestling picture. You mentioned, Jimmy, the detective duo. I'm going to play the game that Al always plays, which is weird connections. I think on one of our early episodes, I compared Charlie Chaplin to Spike Lee. So I'm going to try to outdo that comparison here.
Let's do it.
Professional wrestling fans will definitely be aware of a tag team called the Usos, and they coined and sort of developed this really awesome promo style. They're twin brothers, for those unfamiliar, and one is cutting the promo, the other then picks up. They go back and forth, and it is almost like music, and they're just going back and forth as one entity and back and forth. And the detective duo in Barton Fink is like doing a Cagney noir version of what the Usos are doing. So if you get any part of that and you don't understand the other part of it, either get on and watch Barton Fink or go look at some classic Uso promos and you'll appreciate what I'm saying. How about Judy Davis? Let's give some love to the only lady in Barton Fink.
I would have liked to see a little bit, I don't know, maybe a little bit more of her. I wasn't blown away. She's very good, but I wasn't blown away by her as a love interest to both the Faulkner character and to Barton Fink. When he like confronts her about her admission to like writing for this, ghost writing, for this famous writer. That was her really strong scene. That was a really good moment. What I find it questionable, it's not the acting of it, it's the character making the choice to like befriend this weirdo and then to be there at his beck and call when she already has a guy that's doing that for her. And my problem is that it's not like Barton Fink, the character, is has any power whatsoever in taking her away from this heavyweight writer or like beating him at his game.
Jimmy, I gotta jump in. I think you're misunderstanding what the attraction is and what the connection is there. And this is what I actually think that she does so well, is because I think that so often in performances between leading men and women, chemistry is necessary. These two have chemistry. I buy that there's attraction between them. I buy that she's just one of these beautiful women who likes weird, quirky, creative dudes. And so we see how she's sort of stuck with this guy, and it's physically abusive. He's a mess. He's a drunk. I don't think Barton is a lateral transition at all. Barton is caring. Barton, I think, is in many ways a way for her to get out of that and transition, maybe even get the same thing in a way out of it, to be able to have a relationship with him where she can maybe work and write through him. Because remember, this is a period piece, so there's a really good chance she can't get writing opportunities. I think there was something more to it. There may have been this sort of darker motive, like I said, to her for her to use Barton. But I think what she does so well as a genuinely beautiful woman, that I think anybody who watches this movie would go, that's a really gorgeous lady who might not end up with like a drunk older man or, this quirky, weird writer, but she makes it work. Like she really sells it. On this show, we've done reviews for things like Transformers, and I don't think there's a whole lot of chemistry between Megan Fox and Shia LaBeouf, and that's a relationship that should work, and you look at a movie like this, and I think she really makes it. So I hear what you're saying. I mean, it's not as over the top as like a John Goodman performance. It doesn't have as much sizzle, but I do think there's a lot of subtle command, and even the way she's always just sort of kind of like, I know something you don't, just get through this. Yes, I'll help you. I mean, she does seem like a real, genuine, emotional anchor for the main character. And I think that comes through the performance. I don't think everybody could do that.
Good point, Al.
Before we move on to visual storytelling, I'd like to get a score out of characters and performances. Is there anybody else that you want to shout out in the cast?
Young babyface John Goodman played such a great role, and he was all of these things that were antithetical to what our hero is doing. And he would have never just barged into his neighbor's apartment and offered him drinks. And, at one point, I love the part where they their shoes got
mixed up.
Yeah, just thought that was so good. They really are becoming buddies at the insistence of Goodman. And I love so much how sweaty they are all the time. And it's like there is this gross,
humid,
there's this bad air in that room and in that place. And throughout the story, there's just it's just
I feel like they're sort of like the Coen brothers equivalent of Jerry and Kramer.
Beep ding beep ding. What's the actor's name?
It's the deal with hell.
But what's the actor's name that played the heavy producer?
Are you talking about Jack Lipnick? Is the character played by Michael Lanier?
Jack Lipnick, the heavyweight Hollywood producer who
Colonel Jack.
Yeah, yeah, that was good. The Colonel outfit was so good. I love that he was like poised outside of his pool, and he never got ever a single time got in that pool. His whipping boy also so funny, as a duo together.
1 out of 10, Jimmy. What are we giving characters and performances?
Jimmy gives it an 8.
We didn't talk about the Mosquitoes performance, but pretty solid. We get a nice ECU for those who went to film school. Anyhow, visual storytelling up next. Jimmy,
Now, Jimmy, I know you're a fan of the show, and that means five-timers like yourself, we got to do something special when you come on. I've got a new segment just for you, Jimmy. We're unveiling it now. It's called Gimme the Deeks. Gimme the Deeks. Roger Deakins is famous cinematographer, collaborator with the Coen brothers, of course, shot this film.
Interestingly, this is the first film that he made with them.
That is very true. That may or may not have been my trivia that you just ruined.
Oh,
I'm kidding. It has nothing to do with the trivia. Because what I did is I found a piece of trivia that nobody has ever had. That's right. Al's got pals more than just birds in the trees. Well, you ready for this one, Jimmy? I've got to read it because I got it from a very exclusive source. So,
exclusive.
Gimme the Deeks, segment 1. On the final day of filming, known Roman candle enthusiast Roger Deakins set off a humble display at lunch to celebrate a great shoot. But a stray RC landed near some oil drums and old newspapers, which unfortunately caught the set on fire. Deakins, who is known to love optimism as much as consumer fireworks, suggested they, quote, roll with it, end quote, and again cast and crew did, which is actually why most of the third act of the film is literally on fire. While being interviewed on the set of the Flintstones movie, John Goodman was quoted as saying, "I was upset I studied tap for 6 months, but it was the Cannes film premiere where I realized that it was a better ending than we ever could have had, even though I have no idea what it means," end quote. That concludes the first segment of Gimme the Deeks. Jimmy, your thoughts?
I forgot about John Goodman playing Fred Flintstone.
That's what I draw. I give you this gem, and we're back to the Flintstone. But
This is true?
this is all true. Yes, that was 100% true. Fact checked. The YouTube algorithm likes when we say fact check. So yes, that was
fact check.
Yeah, we fact check that a lot.
Fact check.
In fact, why doesn't everybody go ahead and comment fact checked with a smiley face, and we'll skyrocket. Anyway, let's get into it. You mentioned this drippy, hot, swampy sort of environment that we're in the whole time. Barton Fink is a classical theater writer. This feels like a play. There's only a couple different sets, but even when we're on these different sets, they're shot in a kind of very straightforward way. We have nice little moments like we talked about earlier. Talk about the dripping the dripping wallpaper goop that is mirrored by the pus coming out of John Goodman's ear. Yeah, there's so much more. The wake of fire that follows him in the third act that, ignites the thing. But the other thing I want to bring attention before I throw to you is I really love these close-ups of the typewriter and moreover the paper and the texture of the paper, because the closer you get to it, the more it just mirrors the walls. Wallpaper drips off. It's almost like the pages are consuming him, and he's the pulp of the paper is almost the same consistency in these close-ups as the texture of the walls.
That's beautiful. I want to call attention to Dennis Gassner's production design. It is so incredibly lavish. The wardrobe and the beautiful furniture and the lighting fixtures and the stairways and the plants, interior plants in that beautiful swimming pool. Analog everything, right? Analog typewriters, telephones, this like awesome like Gothic typeface, like this whole Art Deco arches down long, endless hallways. I love those shots where it's just this endless hallway and everybody's shoes are like perfectly lined in front of their door. There is so much.
Did that hallway remind you again of the tubes we keep going in?
Yeah, absolutely. The heat. My God, man, the heat.
My God, the heat.
I'm so caught up and wrapped up in the art department stuff when I'm thinking about the visual storytelling. The lighting and the lensing is secondary because I'm so blown away by how great, again, the costumes are and these lavish sets. The main set, the hotel room set or his apartment set, it is very claustrophobic, and you're right, the goopy, gross artificial, artificially lit, gross wallpaper. And it's a very sweaty, putrefying movie. Like there's something underneath all of this, like a very, like underneath this thin layer of gloss is just decay and rot. And I think that's again connects to like how these writers were feeling about their conflicts with the Hollywood system and all the stuff that was crushing in on them. And remember, Barton Fink wakes up, he sees this beautiful body and her beautiful skin, and then he sees the mosquito on her skin. And when he slaps it, there is no response from the body because she's dead.
One heck of a reveal. Well, I want to know, Jimmy, 1 out of 10, visual storytelling. What are we giving it?
Jimmy gives it an 8.
Jimmy gives it an 8. Wow, I thought this was gonna maybe come in higher, but okay, 8. And by that I mean higher than the characters and performances. But regardless, we've locked in an 8. What did you think of the use of sound in Barton Fink?
Yeah.
Good typewriting? Good typewriting sounds?
Good typewriting sounds. The sound was adequately and professionally presented and recorded. I don't think I need like a big screaming movie theater for the sound to really move me for this movie. What do you think?
I enjoyed the sound design. I think that upon a first viewing, similar to what you just described, you're not really going to walk away with any thoughts of it. I really appreciated it on this screening because it was a lot more immersive than I remember it being. Like there is a lot of kind of just subtle Foley and things going on to really enhance the sound of the mosquito. However much time the mosquito is on screen, you hear it way more often than you see it. And that little buzzing it just does so much to not only really enhance the swampy heat, but also the sort of madness that Barton is experiencing. So that's probably the high note for me, in terms of standout sound design. I agree the score is not necessarily something that you're going to walk away humming. It is most sort of present, as I recall, in the title sequence, and I remember finding it to be really appropriate. But yeah, I don't know. If you had to give it 1 out of 10, Jimmy, what do you give use of sound?
I gave it a 7, Al.
Barton Fink, if nothing, is seeping at the seams, so much so the wallpaper's falling off the plot because there's theme behind it. What did you think of the themes? There's a few I isolated, but I'm curious what were some that stood out to you?
Well, the major theme to me is the difference between classes, right? The difference between the common man and the ruling class. And there's a great moment where Barton Fink is fired up and John Goodman keeps telling him he's got stories, and he stands up and he says, "We all have stories. The hopes and dreams of the common man are as noble as those of any king." And I think that's a testament to the plight of the writer, and the need to have brave aspirations to express through words, these great world-moving ideas. And I think that's really spectacular. We do see the difference in this world between the ruling class, like the big shot producer, and the common man. Think about there's character. Oh yeah, there's that we see the differences between these people.
But what is the big difference though? What is the key difference? And I believe it to be the set piece. I mean, you talked about it earlier, this big, beautiful house, this big, beautiful office versus the hotel. But Barton chose to go to that hotel. Joe Barton doesn't have to be there, because it's interesting where you're saying the theme resonated with you of what Barton is talking about. But what to me, I really saw Barton as this sort of embodiment of the theme of intellectual or creative hypocrisy, because he is not the common man at all.
And even John Goodman screams at him later, "You're not listening." And his whole purpose is that he's supposed to be this voice of the voiceless, this vessel for the common man, but he's not. The whole time he's up in his room. He's not out with the people. And so that's what I thought was so fascinating, that Barton Fink is experiencing writer's block because he has no position to be writing about what he's talking about. And even at the beginning of the movie, the people who are celebrating his work are also intellectuals and higher class. And it is not, and again, as we see, he can't transition to the commercial world, so to speak, this Hollywood set, not because he represents the common man, but because he represents this sort of, dare I say, intellectual fraudulency.
Ooh, wow. I'm into that a lot. Yeah, I'm with you. I think that I think you make a good point about the isolation, um, the what else? What would you call that? Self-imposed isolation.
Yeah.
So that he could sit and do that.
Or self-imposed classism. I mean, because he could sit in his own room in a fancy hotel, but he chooses to sit in his own room in this shit hotel.
Rotting place.
Yeah.
Jimmy lived in southern Taiwan during the pandemic, and when he got there, had to live for an entire month in a quarantine motel. And it was very similar to Barton's surroundings. It was not self-imposed. It was government mandatory with a little window. There were no mosquitoes, but boy, there was some suffering.
This is also a new segment we're debuting on this show where Jimmy unveils some travel trauma.
Jimmy's got stories. There's this competitor, right, that Barton has that he very much looks up to. Remember, he meets this, I'm going to call him the William Faulkner character because that's what he's based on. He meets him in the bathroom and, he really looks up to this guy. And to your point, he is, part of the Faulkner character is part of the ruling class, and maybe in the same ways that you're saying that Barton, the character, also is.
But Barton looks up to him because of his writing skill, and we find out later that he's effectively a fraud, Yeah.
Which I think this movie positions this Faulkner character into the myth of the enlightened drunk writer specifically. And there's a bunch of them. There's Ernest Hemingway and Charles Bukowski. And there's this mythology about these really creative people where alcohol is the stimulant and the catalyst for their great writing and stuff. The movie Frank from 2014 is the story about Michael Fassbender, the actor, plays this musician who the entire film wears this giant paper mache smiley face giant head. And they go into this remote English village and a castle, and they make this sort of Radiohead style, musical recording. And we follow around this guy who's observing this rock star with a big hat on, this big head. And at the end of the movie, we sort of get a reveal of what has happened to his head and face and skin because he can never take that mask off. And there's a point made about how is that mask the thing that helps him or hinders him? And the man's parent reminds the hero that there's a good chance that it has only been a hindrance to him. And I think that I want to bring that back to, again, this mythology of the enlightened alcoholic where, I don't buy it. I don't think that The Sound and the Fury by William Faulkner would have been better or worse had he not been a raging lunatic drunk. There's a good chance it would have been better. And there are so many great, great writers that embody that, you know, that that myth of the drunk. And um, I, I see this movie, I see this character in this movie being like critically as I think the filmmakers are having a criticism of this mythology, and because that's not them, and here you see what I mean?
Yeah, no, I
sort
see what you're saying. I see they're challenging that archetype by making. I think it's most people who would watch this, if they're at all familiar with the Coen brothers, probably make the connection that Barton somewhat symbolizes their kind of I don't know, how would I say, their vibe very, very well. Whereas, yeah, I think that, as you mentioned, the John Mahoney character represents the archetype of your more classical kind of romantic, romanticized version of what a writer or really a creative is. We see it with all sorts of creatives who are just sort of get to a certain position of privilege, and that allows them to abuse all kinds of things, not the least of which is substances, and they convince themselves that the substance is necessary to create, when, to your point, it is just a hindrance. It doesn't actually help them at all. And
Barton Fink, the character, he's not cool. He's a dork, and he wants to be perceived as this great writer, as is his hero, right? But think about the scene where he's dancing with a girl, and the sailors show up, and they're like, "Get out of here! It's my turn to dance with her." Like, he's not fighting anybody. He's not winning. He doesn't win, and I feel bad for him because of that. But he's not cool. He wants to be cool, and he ain't cool.
But he is respected and he is successful, and I think to a lot of people that's very cool. I mean, yeah, if you're in a dance hall with a bunch of sailors, Barton Fink might not seem that cool, but I think in Barton Fink's world, he's the belle of the ball. I isolated integrity as a theme, focus as a theme. I mentioned earlier this sort of intellectual / creative hypocrisy, but I'm curious there, Jimbo, 1 out of 10, what do we give theme?
Jimmy gives it a 7.
Jimmy gives it a 7, which means, Jimmy,
Mm-hmm.
we got all our scores locked in, which means I can read you your total score for Barton Fink. What do you
Okay.
All right, here we go. Plot, you gave it a 7. Characters and performances, an 8. Visual storytelling, an 8. Use of sound, a 7. And theme, you also gave a 7. That's a 74, Jimbo. What are we giving it? A B, a B plus, a B?
Give it a B.
A B.
Yeah, solid B.
Locking it in for the solid B. Let us know. I want to know what everybody listening, every single one of you, I want to know what you scored the film. Let us know in the comments. Even if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, I know you know what YouTube is. Get on over there. Leave a comment. Let us know. I gave the plot your 7. I gave it a 7. Characters and performances to your 8. I gave it a 9. Visual storytelling to your 8. I gave it a 10. I think this movie is phenomenal, especially considering where everybody is at. You mentioned the production design. As we also discussed earlier, the writers / directors of this movie were also the editors. So it's not every day we're talking about a picture that the Coen brothers edited. So for me, this is a 10 out of 10 for visual storytelling. Use of sound to your 7, I gave it an 8.5. Theme to your 7, I gave it a 7.
Wow.
Means to your 74, I scored it an 83. I gave it an A- to your B. I think that's pretty fair. I think Barton himself would be happy with that. Although I don't know if Barton's happy with anything, now come to think. And if I did make him happy, he might slap a bug on me and I might die. So maybe that's not the move. Jimmy, I love having you here. You know that.
What is your favorite Coen Brothers movie? I'm going to put you on the spot. I want to break some other news on this episode.
Wow. Fargo. Gotta be Fargo. Gotta be Fargo. It's so good. It's so perfect in so many ways. What's yours, Al?
I think I would say The Lady Killers. Tom Hanks, one of the Wayans bros. Come on.
Lady Killers is your favorite.
Yeah, no, that Lady Killers is as much of my favorite the Coen Brothers movie is that Roger Deakins fact was actually accurate earlier. So no, I'm not prepared to answer that question, Jimmy. I'm the host. I don't have to answer hard questions like that. I do want to ask you, though, Jimmy, although this was your 5th time, do you think you could do a 6th time? Do you think you could come back to the jungle? Maybe, I know how much Jimmy likes to jam. Maybe next time you can come back and we can talk maybe like a concert movie? Maybe something to do with music? Maybe you can open some doors.
Jimmy likes to jam, so Jimmy'd love to come back.
All right, well, until next time, my friend, this is the end.
Before we jump into the next review, I just wanted to thank you for listening this far, and I ask that you leave a like if you're enjoying the show. And let us know what movies you'd like to hear us score on Real Talk. We're almost certainly on your favorite social media platform, so search Al the Movie Lion wherever you scroll.
American Fiction is a sort of coming-of-middle-age story and demonstrates an incredibly valuable life lesson through its main character, whose arc transforms him from the main character into a fictional one of his own creation, which briefly transforms him into a side character who is greatly rewarded after putting others first. Jeffrey Wright's Thelonious Ellison goes from son to parent, author to character, and self-loathing genius to self-aware success story. American Fiction displays extreme shades of what reality can be, from success through a pseudonym to the tragic actuality of a mind becoming lost inside itself, and how that departure ironically robs all who are close to it of their ability to deny truth. Family, love, and career are the impartial tentpoles of the American culture, and American Fiction is brave enough to suggest that the culture of America is perhaps itself fiction by virtue of a nearly 250-year-old identity crisis that is hilariously examined through themes of dual representation and exploitation of white guilt. We broke out the good tea, not the pods, because I'm joined now by director Ocean Vashti Jude, who, like the Johnny Walker brand, can do it all. Ocean, welcome, and forgive the two Cabana boys. I might have forgotten we were recording today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
For those who may not be familiar, Ocean, you are an incredibly talented director who we had the pleasure a few years ago of crossing paths on a project, and it's been a real pleasure getting to kind of watch your work since then, which is one of the reasons I was really excited to have you on the show. What's your relationship like with American Fiction before this conversation?
I think when like Oscar time was coming around and I was hearing a little bit of buzz around this, I started watching it, and immediately I thought it was not the movie for me. I thought it was just playing on that simple tone of, okay, there's two types of blackness. There's like the polished, very preppy blackness, and there's kind of like the quote unquote Tyler Perry. And I wasn't interested in hearing that view. I recently rewatched it, and it's not even about that. It's really about tackling authenticity. And it's just about, it's not trying to answer the question of like what we should be doing, but more about like the breadth of blackness gets disrupted a lot. And this is a movie of a lot of characters trying to fight that, but also seeing opportunities to succeed and achieve by maybe dancing in another role. And I thought that was very, very interesting. I was surprised. I was really surprised.
I am a white lion for those, again, who might not be aware. And what I really took away from it, and I've seen it a few times, but especially on the last viewing, was you obviously have black characters who themselves are kind of figuring out their identity and what that means, especially as a result of like big life events that are happening. But then that's also juxtaposed with all of these white characters who absolutely think they know what those black characters should be and who those black characters are and how those black characters should be represented and presented. We talk about 5 different categories here on the show. We'll jump into plot first. And the reason I'm kind of diving into it is because there's a scene towards the end where Jeffrey Wright's monk character is talking to this producer played by Adam Brody, which is kind of a fun cameo. And they're talking about sort of different ways to end the movie. And Monk suggests sort of a very authentic sort of ending about life. The producer's not interested in that. He suggests finding love and falling in love. The producer's not interested in that. But when he suggests this very like gratuitously violent, where he dies, the producer says that's genius. And there's just all these really subtle moments. I don't know if it's funny to say important, but I, as a member of the white audience, really appreciated seeing that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's touching on something that we see not only in real life, but obviously in media, where there's this idea that like in order for blackness to exist, it has to be digestible. So I think that scene is like really funny where it's like our character Monk is trying to give the breadth of our experience. And it's just like, it's almost like they're just waiting for that trauma porn, because not only is that something that is seen that makes money, or it's like what people have come to expect, it's just one of those things that actually it just reinforces where society wants to put Black people. So I think I really enjoyed that scene. And it's kind of like till it's like Black producers, Black directors, telling Black stories, you're gonna get a lot of the white lens being like, yes, that's what I want. That's Oscar bait. Like that I want to cry. I want to something like that. So and then like also the great thing is it's like a pedestal upshot where like a gospel song is playing like after he just got shot. And it's just like, yeah, like we would all lie if we haven't already seen that and been like, wow, powerful.
It was really refreshing to see a piece of work that just seemed to so easily and it discussed this stuff. It was also really entertaining. I mean, I laughed a ton. I cried during this movie, but I also laughed a lot. Like it's a really easy watch.
I think the real great thing about this piece of cinema is that it doesn't really necessarily answer the question. It just kind of gives you all the sides. And I think you see that a lot when, like the Coraline character, she's a fan of Monk's like original books, and then she also read like the quote unquote ghetto book, and like she's just been like, oh, I like it. And it's like the reality is like when you really take a step back, there's a market for all of these stories.
Right.
It's just I think the conflict, the frustration is that it seems that society usually just wants one version of the book. And that's like something that's interesting that like, yes, like kind of what you're saying, this movie is so funny, but it's always bouncing off the first frustration. And I really appreciated that. And I really appreciated the film not trying to answer that question and not being like, don't take the money, or like, you got to take the money, or like tell authentic stories, or like, be generic. And I just think that's the dance we're doing in this movie. And it's like, yeah, I'm going along for the ride. So I really love that.
I got to get a score out of you. 1 out of 10 for the plot. What would you give American Fiction?
I'm gonna give it a 7.5.
The 7.5, locking it in. I love the confidence of breaking out the half point on the first score. This is great. This is a great way to kick things off. Well, that brings us to characters and performances. And you were just talking about Monk and sort of his relationship with this sort of girl that he's seeing in the film and the way she responds to his work. And it's interesting because as artists, I think we have all kind of been in these situations where like people's relationships with our work are almost these like different standalone relationships that we get really insecure about. But I thought it was just a really interesting statement how at that point in the film, like he hasn't come to terms with, again, who he wants to be or what he wants to be. And you could say he doesn't really love himself. And you have this woman who's praising work of his without even knowing it's work of his, and he can't accept it because he's angry at the work. He's kind of angry at himself.
Yeah, I think if you kind of look at the film where it's talking about the love for maybe stereotypes, what is really beautiful about this film is then when you meet the characters of Monk's family, they are, going back to the soundtrack, they are like jazz. They're flowing, they are chaotic. Like I think what's very interesting too, the casting is also like they're casting a lot of people who we know like immediately.
Yeah.
We have known to love, like, obviously Trace Ellis Ross, but even like Leslie, who was like big in like black TV, like in the 70s. Everybody loves like Sterling K. Brown.
Yep.
So not only are like who they cast, it was like, returning home, seeing the people you always see on TV. Something that I thought was also interesting is like as they're trying to articulate, as Monk is trying to fight with kind of like this ghetto porn that he's trying to write, the reality is like every single character is one of academics, is very educated. Lisa's a doctor. Cliff is like really intelligent, even though he's like struggling with like being an addict. Coraline is a lawyer. So I think like the interesting thing that I loved is that it was telling a story, but it was showing that, oh, the blackness and what black people can be is so big and so deep. And then even getting down to like Lorraine and May, who were like butter. Just like literally, I just remember like every time like they walked in, I like smiled. Like the wedding, I'm just like, I love it. And that's what is like the spectrum is that, yeah, like there's people going in Yale, like you in their dissertation, and then other people are just like, I work hard, I'm a homemaker, and stuff like that. And so I really appreciated it's almost like they were creating new caricatures of what black people could be, and they were kind of in opposition of the kind of classic stereotypes. Like I think somebody who stood out for me was Cliff, because I think like here we have like a black gay man, we're kind of it authentically gets shown, and then also like his struggle with his queerness is not so much him as far as being authentic, and I think that's one of the big things. It's that like he is constantly being pushed out of his family.
Yeah.
And like there's that beautiful scene where he's dancing with his mom in her like living situation, and then it gets disrupted by like her being like, oh, I knew you weren't queer. It is kind of like that thing was like so powerful. And even when he's walking out, he tells like Caroline like, oh, this family will break your heart. So I think it's showing that like when we think of like the trauma of what blackness is, once again, the movie's like talking about a book that's talking about like guns, drugs, and violence. But in reality, the family that we're existing with, all their pains are like these microaggressions. They're very quiet. They're very subtle. It's very like things not seen and people trying to deal with it. Like you could even argue that Monk has a little bit of a drinking problem, because he really, even though it's like not like what we see from Cliff, but it's just like this kind of like, okay, we're very quiet. We keep it to ourselves. We say words. Like I think this movie does a really great job, and we'll probably talk about it later, of the visuals of like we're on close-ups seeing the pain instead of like these big monologues, which is what is happening in the books. So I thought that was interesting.
These characters are layered, and they're layered in a way that definitely go against sort of type, but are so familiar to the human experience that I walk away from this movie going, the black experience is not separate from the white experience. It's sort of on top of it. No matter what your background is, if you're a doctor, if you're the most educated person, you have to sort of deal with this like cloak society puts on you. And then you got to deal with all the other shit that life throws at you, which is really, really, really hard. Any other thoughts on the characters and performances before I get a grade out of you?
I will say, just kind of piggybacking off what you said, is like the scene where Cliff gets a hug is like, that is a culmination of the story, because the thing is like the movie poses it feels like in society sometimes it's easier to give the people what they want instead of being authentic, and that's what Cliff is always fighting. And like in that moment he's being authentic and he's rewarded by it.
Exactly.
There's that hug, like I felt that hug. So I just love that point.
Yeah, no, you're right. It is the first time, and I'm kind of doing this off the top of my head, but it almost feels like the first time anybody in the movie is maybe rewarded for being authentic, or not, isn't, especially not isn't punished. 1 out of 10, Osha. What do you give the characters and performances?
I'm gonna go with the half number again, 8.5.
The 8.5. Well, that brings us to visual storytelling, and I'm really excited to talk about visual storytelling because you touched on, a moment earlier, which I really want to let you elaborate on. But there's just the use of light in this, I feel like is really, really beautiful.
Once again, I think when I first started watching it, I was like, oh, like I would have backlit that. I would, like stuff like that. What I appreciated was this is kind of like a comedy. It's a satirical, comedy that's dealing with these, darker themes. And I think a lot of people would tell this story where it's like through language and kind of like tell us how they are feeling. But I really appreciated like all the tight shots where it really showed us like how much they were struggling with, making these decisions, whether it's like, like, yeah, just like making these decisions or like hearing from like a publisher or, you know, uh, yeah, just the close-ups just made me really feel the characters' emotions and really let me know, what they were feeling in a world where like it's a little bit more quieter. Like I said earlier, like these characters aren't just like monologuing at each other. The other thing is I really appreciated the wide shots. Once again, this is very unique for like a quote unquote black film because it's like down by the water,
Right.
and like for me, when I even think of like holding sandals and like walking the beach, I only think of like some white woman from like Maine or something like that. It just flowed. I think you were talking about that earlier. It just kind of like flowed in a way that was like in opposition with like the chaos of like all this decision making. And what's interesting is like the movie then felt very romantic. It actually felt very cozy, even though like what is actually happening, it's like classic like family drama, like, a mom being sick, like interpersonal dynamics within. And then yeah, like there was a lightness to like pretty much all of it, which is like you could kind of argue that like, if you think of like a movie that is like maybe about like Mexicans or Mexico, you get that sepia tone. And then like,
Right.
I just remember when Moonlight came out and it was like those dark colors, like then every movie that was trying to emulate the black experience is like dark colors, dark colors, dark colors. When you watch this film, like even if your eyes wander, you're like, oh, that's like a nice table, or like, oh, great bookshelf. It's just like it's very like, it's refreshing to kind of get like this
Yeah.
slow romantic look at the story. Yeah.
It really is beautiful. I don't think I appreciated before watching it this time how it's just a really good looking movie. Like there's a lot of great frames. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like sometimes like especially when because there's so many types of movies. There's movies where like you're like, oh my God, the cinematography, like you're oh my God. And then there's other movies where it's like when you're kind of remembering it, you fall in love with it. And that's like the mark of a good cinematographer that like it wasn't like so like, oh my God, in your face. It just like fits the story, it fits the pacing, it fits the characters. And then also like there's been movies about contemplating the black experience, and I can off the top of my head think that like two or three of those focus actually heavily on like more handheld, like more chaotic. So I think I'm like appreciating this for just kind of like, okay, like we're panning over, or like something that I just like thought was just so sweet and tender is like the scene when they're packing up the house and you can see all the photos of like the family and the heritage, and the housekeeper is like asking for like the soda machine. And so it's kind of like the 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 house is like a little bit darker because they're on their way out, but there's still some golden light shooting from above coming down the stairs. And it's just like this optimism of like we're gonna be all right.
Yeah.
Which if that's not, the history of my people in America, I don't know what is. And so it's just like that, but that's so subtle. You only think on that when you're remembering it, and I just really appreciate that.
This movie makes a lot of really interesting decisions about what it shows and what it doesn't show. And I think we can all, or I mean, at least for me, deciding to move is not as emotional as leaving the house, as packing up. Those are long days. Those are days that are sometimes filled with tears and things like that. And so there is, I think, just an emotional weight with having the decision of just seeing them kind of briefly packing up and moving. And like you said, I love that. Yeah, that angelic sort of light coming from above, like instilling this hope, and that hope that comes through seeing people being okay in an emotional moment, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And I want to call attention to one more image that I, again, had not noticed before and only noticed on this viewing. When Monk is this is in the third act, sort of before he's going to basically maybe accept this award, maybe get gunned down by feds, who knows? But he's leaving the meeting and he's coming downstairs and he sees this large photo of this little boy who's just sort of sitting there leaning on a desk with his head in hands, and he's looking at someone who's holding two dolls. One of them is white and one of them is black. And I just, again, thought it was this really interesting moment where, because so often when we talk about cinematography, the author might just create that moment in camera, but I like the decision of Monk finding an image, because then we see the character thinking about that image in the same way we're thinking about that image, as opposed to him sort of experiencing or living that moment. And so again, when I talk about like what we do see versus what we don't see, this is sort of an evolution of that, where again, we see Monk looking at an image and thinking about an image, which allows us to think about the image. And again, that's me piggybacking off of what you said earlier too, about these pensive moments we see with the characters, where we're watching them think. And even very early on, I think there's a joke where they kind of like poo-poo some voiceover and stuff, so you're gonna just watch actors thinking, which I really like that choice. Anyway,
Yeah.
I'm going to make the choice to stop talking now and ask you for your score on visual storytelling, 1 out of 10.
9.
No half point there. A confident, strong 9. That brings us to the use of sound. This is a movie that the main character's name is Thelonious. He is nicknamed Monk. So the stylings in the soundtrack are very akin to what you might hear in a Thelonious Monk album. So that felt like a choice that, again, was very appropriate for the sort of metaphor.
I just thought it was, I think that my first reaction to it was that it was just really smart. I think like people who maybe aren't lovers of jazz, they have this idea that like, jazz is kind of like sweet and it's chill and it's like coffee. Like there's a warmness to it, but the history of jazz is that it's like birthed out of chaos. It's birthed out of friction. The notes and the sounds and the instruments all kind of like bashing into each other is very reminiscent of, obviously the Black experience in America, but also like in the 20s, where we're getting that dance of like Black people are starting to be like, hey, like we want to venture out, we want to do this and this and this, and they're like, no, Black people are over here. So I really appreciated kind of like the choice of the soundtrack being something that's like just like inherently Black, that like is for Black people, and then like historically speaking, every once in a while like white people take it like and like make it their own, or like even like Japanese jazz. But I think like when you think of the film and then you're hearing this jazz, I think there's like a weird calmness to a lot of the scenes, but there's this underlying friction, which is the movie, which is that like it's like Black people are just out here doing their thing, and then it's always something. And whether that's like literally against like white America with media, or just like interpersonal. So I just remember being like, oh, it's so cozy, and it's like letting us sit into it, but then there's it plays up like these themes of chaos.
Well, then I will ask, 1 out of 10, what do we give it? You don't have to. In another universe, you would have to scat and then give your answer. But
Absolutely. My dream. Yeah, it just felt right. I'm gonna give it a 8.5.
the 8.5 locked in. That brings us to the final category, which is theme. This movie definitely comes correct with the themes. I noted a few. I kind of said in my open, it explores sort of dual representation, just duality in general, themes of hypocrisy. And obviously I think the third act, to me, it really seemed like it was all about self-love and that kind of embracing who you are and being okay with that.
I mean, I agree with all of those. I think like just obviously the one that's like in your face is like I wrote something along the lines of like selling out or leveling up.
Yeah, I love that. Right. Integrity. Yeah, it's the ultimate question of self-integrity. Yeah.
Yeah.
And not that one is right or wrong, just what does that mean to you? Yeah.
Yeah, and that I think that's the thing is like there is no right answer because I think like also the movie paints the picture of like I think sometimes people want to be moral where it's like, oh, I don't want to sell myself out, but like real life is happening as you are creating art. Like him having to like put his mom in a home. We all anybody that's even experienced that knows like it is not cheap change. It is not cheap change. And then it's like there's a world where like you could, tomorrow I could write like, like a stereotypical like 10-minute thing about, the Black experience, even though maybe I'll feel like, what did I just do? Somebody could read that and be like, I live that. So like, who are you to deny somebody else's true experience? And there's just kind of that dance. But I think like something that I wrote also a theme that I really liked is like this fight for authenticity. I think in a world, if the world was like, we can tell a lot of Black stories, then I don't think people would have such a dilemma on like what stories are being told. But I think because it seems like in this movie and in life that there's one type of, or like there's like a few type of digestible stories, then I think at the end of the day, all of us want to just be like authentic and like be our individual self. And so that ends up being a struggle because isn't that what we all want? And so I think it just plays with these themes, but I appreciate that like it doesn't try to answer it. It wasn't like, oh, I'm not gonna take the money. Because I will say, because I talk a lot about this in life or even when I'm teaching, like when I first got into the business, I was very much like, there are specific stories I want to tell. This is my POV. This is like how I direct, and this is how I am as a filmmaker. And then there is like times where like they're like, hey, we have this job. It's like, for medicine. And I was like, I have nothing to say about it. Then they show me how much they're gonna pay me, and I'm like, absolutely, like this is like my thing. So it's just like that kind of dance, and it's like it's complicated and it makes for good conflict in a film, but also it reveals itself as like such a good space for humor.
If you aspire to be something more than what you currently are, you're going to have to, at some point, maybe even in real time, try to figure out what that means, what that is, because you are growing. It's a growing pain. I'm curious, 1 out of 10, what would you give the themes?
7.5.
7.5. Well, that's amazing. Well, we have a final score locked in then for you, so I can reveal now that you gave the plot a 7.5, the characters and performances an 8.5, the visual storytelling a 9, the use of sound an 8.5, and the themes a 7.5, for a total of 82, which here on Real Talk is a solid A. You have the ability to adjust that, bump it up or down. Are we cool with an 82 and an A?
Yeah, that feels right for this.
Love it. I scored it a little bit higher. I gave the plot to your 7.5. I gave it a 10, largely because of the ending. I just really liked it. We didn't actually touch on it, but the very last shot is Monk in this great classic car with his brother driving off sort of, not quite into the sunset, but on a beautiful, lovely Hollywood day. And he looks over and there's a young Black actor who's dressed as a slave and just sort of gives him the peace sign. And for me, I thought, again, it was such a great non-ending because the ending is what we've sort of said throughout this conversation. This movie is about a cycle. This movie is about a conversation. This movie is about something that people are going to be talking about. I digress. I gave it a 10 for that. Characters and performances, I gave a 9. I was moved a lot by a lot of these characters in different ways. So for me, it was worth the 9. Visual storytelling, I also gave it a 10 just because, like I said, for some reason upon this watch, I was really enamored with the visuals. I don't know, it's just because I've seen it a few times. But I was just really captivated and caught up in it. Use of sound, to your 8.5, I gave it a 9. And then the themes, I gave it a 9.5 out of 10 to your 7.5. I feel like in many ways, this movie sort of is close to just being a perfect example of what it's discussing. And for me, I think that almost earns it a 10, but the only reason I'm not comfortable giving it a 10 is because I don't know the filmmaker. And I feel like I would have to kind of know the filmmaker and know their intention to really truly know if the film is an example of what it's talking about. So it could be a 10, but until we get lunch, I'm locking it at 9.5. I gave it a 95, so I gave it an A+. I really, really enjoyed this movie, and every time I watch it, I like it a bit more. I really need to have a yawn, Ocean. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this was amazing. And I will say one last thing, going back to like, I love that ending scene of the guy just like a slave and being like, whatever, which for me, it just felt like, let's go to work. But I will say something that's iconic, and this might be for anybody that reads it as well, is the last 2 words of this movie is Tyler Perry. So you can take that and do what you want with it. And that's kind of like beautiful and funny.
I would love to have you back sometime to come back to the jungle, talk about how. Can I put you on the spot? I know this is an awful thing to ask any filmmaker, but what are some of your favorite movies? Maybe 1 or 2 of your favorites, maybe 1 or 2 of your favorite filmmakers.
Oh, this is, well, because I was just having this conversation last night and I just changed my letterbox information where I would say one of my favorite films ever is Memories of Murder by Bong Joon. It's anybody that likes a thriller, and it's phenomenal. Framing is everything. Then somebody asked me like what my favorite comedy was. And I'm a kid of the 90s. And so there was a lot. I think I started off with Best in Show, but I landed at Mrs. Doubtfire. It kind of gives you everything. I'm a child of divorce, so also that might be into it. And I love Robin Williams. But yeah, I love so much about cinema, and I love the range of it. Probably like Park Woon-ho is like one of my favorite directors. Obviously, PTA. I adore Andrea Arnold. Makes like movies where I go, these are the type of movies that I would like to make. But yeah, anybody that can make a movie, anybody that has made a movie, I love them because we know it's a hard process. So always like hats off to those people that can make their art.
Well, anyway, if we ever review Mrs. Doubtfire as well, I will definitely give you a ring because we'd love to have you back. And I love Christopher Guest like so much. I remember watching Best in Show the first time with my mom, and very few comedies my mom and I both laughed out loud a ton at, and Best in Show one of them. So I'm going to be very happy to hear you say that. But in any case, I know you are a very, very busy person, so I will let you get back to being an awesome, busy filmmaker. Thank you so much for coming to the jungle. And until next time, please be well.
Appreciate you.
Thanks for listening, and here's a look at the scoreboard from our show. Matt Summerstein graded Adaptation an 88 in an A to my 94 in an A, with a 91 in A average, making it the highest scored film on today's show. Jimmy the Toucan scored Barton Fink a 74 in a B to my 83 in an A minus, with an average of 78.5 and a B plus. Finally, Ocean Vashti Jude scored American Fiction an 82 in an A to my 95 and an A plus, with an average of 88.5 and an A. Please tell me what you graded each film in the comments, as I really do want to know. A big thank you to Matt Summerstein, who you should follow for lots of laughs. Support Jimmy the Toucan by picking up his merch that's linked in the show description, and check out that same description for a link to Ocean Vashti Jude's website, where you can see her work and get in contact. Join us next time for our bonus holiday special of Very 90s Christmas. Post-Wrestling co-founder John Pollock debuts to review Home Alone. Brooklyn cinematographer Christina Dobre returns to score The Muppets Christmas Carol. Sid the Cinema Sloth is back to grade Jingle All the Way. And Lakeisha Jackson also returns with a bonus review of Die Hard. Thanks to the team at Real Digital for producing this episode, and Platinum Plastic, who supplies all our show's merchandise on Redbubble.com. If you haven't left a like by now, you might as well, and subscribe to the channel, as well as hit the bell icon to be notified when Real Talk drops each week. Thanks for listening, and if you're going to talk movies, make sure it's Real Talk.
Well, I just find that word really offensive.
With all due respect, Brittany, I got over it. I'm pretty sure you can too.